The wind did not stop howling after that moment. Instead, it seemed to lean closer, as if the desert itself wanted to hear what would happen next. Dust curled around the boots of the cowboy and the fallen mask at his feet, the silence between them heavier than any gunshot he had ever heard. His fingers trembled, not from fear of death, but from the shock of understanding. All those months of tracking, all those nights sleeping with one eye open, all the stories whispered in saloons about the ghost of the Red Canyon, the ruthless Apache warrior who struck without mercy, none of them had prepared him for this truth. The warrior stood upright now, shoulders squared, her dark hair loose in the wind, eyes sharp as obsidian and burning with something far older than rage. She did not reach for her weapon. She simply watched him, measuring him the way a hunter measures wounded prey, and in that gaze the cowboy felt smaller than he ever had in his life. He thought of every fight he had ever won, every man he had beaten or buried, and suddenly none of it mattered. This was different. This was not about pride or land or blood anymore. This was about a line he could never uncross once he understood who stood before him. Memories crashed into him like thunder. He remembered the first time he had heard her name, spoken in fear by a dying ranch hand. He remembered the burned wagons, the clean precision of each ambush, the way no child or helpless soul was ever harmed, even when vengeance would have been easy. Back then, he had dismissed those details as coincidence. Now they screamed meaning. The woman stepped closer, boots crunching softly against the earth, and the cowboy realized she was not waiting for mercy, she was waiting for his choice. Kill her and become the monster the desert already thought him to be, or lower his weapon and face a truth that would shatter everything he believed about strength. His grip loosened, and the revolver felt suddenly heavy, like a burden instead of a tool. Her voice came low and steady, carrying across the open land without effort. She spoke his name. Hearing it from her lips sent a chill through his spine. She told him she had known who he was from the beginning, that she had studied his patterns the same way he had studied hers. She spoke of stolen land, broken treaties, and a father who had died protecting his people while the world looked the other way. But there was no pleading in her words, no apology. She did not justify herself. She simply stated her truth, as immovable as the mountains behind her. The cowboy felt something crack inside his chest. He had grown up believing the world was simple, good men on one side, bad men on the other. Standing there, staring into her unflinching eyes, he realized how dangerous that lie had been. The desert seemed to hold its breath as he slowly lowered his gun. It was not surrender, it was acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that courage wore many faces, that strength was not owned by one gender, one flag, or one story written by the victors. The woman did not smile. She nodded once, a warrior's nod, and in that small gesture was a lifetime of battles fought alone. The cowboy knew that this moment would haunt him forever, that nothing would ever be the same again. He did not know if they would walk away as enemies or uneasy allies, only that the mask had fallen not just from her face, but from his own understanding of the world. As they stood there, two figures carved against the endless horizon, the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in blood red and gold. Somewhere far away, a hawk cried out, and the sound echoed like a warning and a promise all at once. This was not the end of the story, it was the beginning of something far greater, something that would test loyalty, honor, and the meaning of justice in a land built on conquest and silence. And as the wind carried their shadows across the sand, one truth became clear: legends are not born from strength alone, but from the courage to face the truth when it finally stands before you unmasked. If this story has pulled you into its world, if you feel the weight of that moment and want to know what happens next, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Chapter 2 will take you deeper into betrayal, sacrifice, and a destiny neither of them can escape. Stay with us, because the most powerful part of this story is yet to come. Night descended on the desert slowly, like a heavy curtain being drawn across a stage that had seen too much blood and truth for one day. The cowboy and the Apache woman walked apart at first, not side by side, but not enemies either, two wary souls moving through the same silence, each carrying the weight of choices already made and those still to come. The stars emerged one by one, cold and watchful, as if the sky itself were judging whether this fragile ceasefire deserved to exist. The cowboy's thoughts churned louder than his boots against the sand. Every step away from that battlefield felt like betrayal to the life he had known, yet every step toward understanding felt like the only honest path left. He had hunted her as a legend, a monster wrapped in fear and rumor, but now that legend had a voice, a face, and a history that refused to be ignored. They reached a narrow canyon where firelight flickered against stone walls painted with symbols older than any town or border. This was her land, sacred, scarred, and still standing despite everything done to erase it. She finally spoke again, not with anger but with a tired clarity that cut deeper than rage ever could. She told him about the children forced to run, the elders buried without ceremony, the promises broken by men who shook hands by day and burned villages by night. Each word struck him like a hammer, reshaping his understanding of justice. He realized then that survival had made her ruthless, but love for her people had made her disciplined. Violence had never been her goal, it had been her language of last resort. The cowboy sat by the fire, listening, the flames reflecting in his eyes like ghosts of everything he had lost and taken. He confessed his own story, not as an excuse, but as a truth he could no longer hide. He spoke of growing up with nothing, of learning early that a gun earned respect faster than kindness, of being praised for victories that now tasted like ash. He admitted that hunting her had given his life purpose when he had none, and that realizing who she was had stripped that purpose bare. For the first time, he understood that the West had raised him to survive, not to understand. And understanding, he was learning, was far more dangerous. As dawn approached, their uneasy alliance was tested sooner than either expected. Riders appeared on the horizon, men driven by bounty and fear, carrying rifles and certainty in equal measure. They were not there to talk. The cowboy recognized some of them, men he had ridden with before, men who would not hesitate to kill the woman and brand him a traitor for standing in the way. The Apache warrior did not flinch. She prepared for battle with the calm of someone who had accepted death long ago. But the cowboy stepped forward, placing himself between her and the coming violence, knowing that this choice would burn every bridge he had left. The fight that followed was brutal and swift, echoing through the canyon like a reckoning long overdue. Bullets tore through stone, arrows flew with deadly precision, and the desert bore witness once more to blood spilled in the name of belief. The cowboy fought not for pay or reputation this time, but for truth. And when the dust finally settled, the riders were gone, some fleeing, some silent forever, and the cowboy stood wounded but alive, staring at the woman he had once sworn to kill. In her eyes, he saw respect, not gratitude. Respect earned through action, not words. When the sun rose fully, she told him their paths would soon diverge. Peace, she said, was not a gift the world was ready to accept, and her people still needed a shadow to protect them. The cowboy nodded, understanding that redemption did not always mean staying, it sometimes meant letting go. They parted without ceremony, without promises they could not keep. But something had changed in the land that morning. A story had shifted direction. Years later, whispers would spread across the frontier, not of a masked Apache warrior alone, and not of a ruthless cowboy, but of a moment when two enemies chose truth over legend. Some would call it weakness. Others would call it the bravest act the West had ever seen. And somewhere beneath the endless sky, the desert would remember. If this story moved you, if it made you question the legends you've been told and the ones you still believe, subscribe to the channel and become part of a community that values powerful stories, hidden truths, and unforgettable journeys. More stories like this are coming, stories that challenge, inspire, and stay with you long after the final word. Don't miss the next one.